In philosophy, there are a couple branches. Some things like epistemology, ontology, but there are three that are interesting. One of them is logic, another one is aesthetics, and ethics. And these three have been grouped together under the normative sciences by Charles Sanders Peirce. So this was really interesting. What normative sciences are, as opposed to natural sciences, concerned with what ought to be, and natural sciences are concerned with what is. So, for example, if you study physics, then you are trying to understand how things are. So you're doing experiments and you're saying this is how it is. So if I take a weight, an object, and I drop it, then it's going to be here after X amount of seconds. So there's no judgment on what should be here. It's just what is. When you go to the normative sciences, you're concerned with what ought to be. So there's an element of judgment. So if we say, if we take a look at someone who falls down and hurts himself, and someone passes by them and then attends to them and tries to help them, we're going to say, hey, this is good. It's a moral judgment. We're assessing that this person did good by helping them. If we were just assessing what is, we could say this person stopped and helped them, but we're not formulating any moral judgments on it. As soon as we say this is good, a good thing, it becomes sort of normative. So in that sense, I think it makes sense that aesthetic, which is kind of what's beautiful, seems like it's connected with an idea of taste, and ethics, which is how we should act, how we want us to act, then it makes sense that it would be under the group of normative sciences. But then logic, and this was what Peirce was suggesting, that logic was also a normative science. Now logic is very akin to mathematics. It's a very rigid thing. It's a methodological, and if mathematics is the language of physics, and physics is a descriptive science, it's describing things. It's just postulating what is, and it's not really concerned with what ought to be. So the idea of logic being a normative science, something that is related to judgments, was something that I couldn't really grasp, and I really didn't understand what he meant. And then while I was in the shower, an idea came to me, and it all clicked, and it all made sense. And I think he's right. And there's a very specific example that came to mind that I want to share with you, which I think brings all these three branches, ethics, aesthetics, and logic, together under the normative science. And I think the example will help to illustrate that point. So let's think about golf. If you think about golfing, it's a game, and we have established what the rules of the game are, what every golfer should aspire to do, which is put the ball in the cup, or hit the ball as close to the cup as possible. So we could see that this could be a moral judgment. It's an ethical position. We have decided that what's ethical in this context, in this scenario, is to strike a ball and put it in the cup, or put it as close to the cup as possible. So there is a judgment here. We're not just describing the fact that the ball is struck into the cup, we're saying this is what ought to happen, this is what ought to be. So there's a sense of an ethical judgment here. Now, if we think about logic, then the logic of that ethical judgment would be how to get there, in the sense that what would be logical, what is the logic of things that should happen so that this ethical position is accomplished. So we could say it would be logical that when you strike the ball, then you use your muscles well, meaning that you don't want to just force with just your arms. You might want to use your hip, because if you use your hip, then you generate more power. So the fact that using your hip will generate more power is a descriptive thing. We're describing something, but it is aligned with what the goal is, with what the ethical judgment is. So we could talk about all the logical mechanics that needs to happen in order to have a shot that will accomplish its objective. One thing that we might want is to have regularity. We want all the shots to be, all our movements to be pretty much the same, because if we can repeat the same, then we have more control on the outcome. So what we might want to do is to strike the ball with our arms and our head position as much as possible in the same way. So there is a logic here as to what kind of moments needs to happen. What are the logical mechanics so that the desired outcome happens. So if we only describe the logic of someone striking a ball, then it's meaningless unless there is a goal. This logic has to somehow be aligned with a specific goal, which is a arbitrarily determined objective, which is ethical and normative in its nature. Now, the aesthetics, I think, is really interesting, because when we look at a professional golfer, someone who's very, very good, we often will look at their swing and say, what a beautiful swing, right? And I think this judgment of beauty of a swing is the establishment of when the logic of what is happening is well aligned with the objective, the moral judgment that we've established. And when these two are connected together, then that's when I think we find beauty. There are 1,000 logical ideas that you could talk about to describe what a good golf swing is, but it's very difficult to talk about all of them. And I think beauty arises when all of these somehow create a cohesive story. They all align together in one entity, a really good swing. Then beauty emerges. And the reason beauty emerges is because all these logical rules or conducts for good movements are coordinated towards a goal that we want to happen, that we've established for ourselves. And ethical judgments, which is striking the ball inside the cup. So I think these three are really well linked together. And I think aesthetic judgments, what is beautiful, really connects well the logical and the ethical. Thank you.